So welcome to the class, and in this we are going to continue on from the last class in which we talked about causes for increase and decrease in demand. And in that we talked about the factors other than price. Because of that, there is either an increase in price or decrease in price, decrease in demand, either increase in demand or decrease in demand. And in that, to while explaining, I felt that until we took up the diagrams, it would be difficult to understand substitute goods and complementary goods. So here I am to make that clear. Causes for increase in demand. Of course, we know the factors other than price that affect demand. They are the ones that lead to an increase or decrease in demand. But in substitute goods, how does it happen? I'm going to explain with the help of these two diagrams. So what is important is that we will let's take the same substitutes that we've been doing earlier, which is Coke and Pepsi. So, and one more thing that we have to keep in mind, we're going to assume that one substitute goods price remains the same, and it's only the change in price of the other substitute. So let the other substitute whose price remains the same be Pepsi. So that is what I'm going to show on the diagram, that given the price, the Pepsi price remains the same, and there'll be only a change in the price of Coke. So what happens? Let's just take it that suppose if the price of Coke rises and Pepsi being a substitute good for Coke, what happens with the same price? Its price remains the same at OP. So initially the demand was DO, that is D original, where the quantity that was taken up or was bought was OQ0. And because there has been a rise in the price of Coke, people will come rushing to buy more of Pepsi. So what happens? The demand for Pepsi goes on to D1. So how much quantity? Q1. At that, so much of quantity, because the price of Pepsi hasn't changed. So that leads to an increase in demand. So if the price of the substitute good increases, then there'll be an increase in demand for the other substitute good whose price remains the same. Is that clear? Now let's take the other one, the one at the bottom. So in this again, we find that we are going to use the same example of substitute good. That is, we are going to talk about Pepsi and Coke. Now in this, in this what do we see? That suppose if the price of the Coke falls, price of the Coke now has fallen. So what happens here? Initially, the price of Pepsi, at the price of Pepsi, the quantity demanded was DO, that is D original. So much quantity was demanded, Q0 or QO. Now when there's a fall in the price of Coke, since it's a good substitute of Pepsi, people will stop buying or stop demanding Pepsi. So the demand will shift leftward to D1, showing of decrease in demand from OQ0 to OQ dash. So that is it. So is that clear? So this is in case of the substitute good. Now we're going to do the increase and decrease in demand in case of complementary good. So when we are doing related goods, one is substitute good and the other is complementary goods. And then again, in complementary goods, let's also talk about the same complementary goods that we have been talking about: petrol and cars. And in this, let me just assume that the price of the car doesn't change. It's the price of the petrol that is changing, and because of that there'll be an increase or decrease in the complementary good. So have a look and you will see that it'll be clearer to you here. So you know what, I'm revising from the last class just to make it very clear, because when I heard myself it wasn't really clear. So here it is. So let's take the complementary good, car and petrol. Again, as we said, we made an assumption that the price of the car remains the same. It's the change in petrol, complementary, price of good, that is price of petrol. Now suppose if there is an increase in the price of petrol, so what happens? Okay, here I think I've shown you the decrease. Okay, suppose there's a decrease in the price of petrol. So what will happen? The demand curve or the demand for cars will increase. It will go from D original to D2. And in the next case, as we see, suppose if we find that the price of petrol increases, and if it rises, what happens? Yes, so there is a leftward shift. So DO is the D original, Q is the Q original. That means the demand for cars is so much. And if the price of petrol increases, it impacts the demand for car because it's a complementary good. So there's a leftward shift, as you can see, to D1. So that's what it is. So here, I'm sure now it's there'll be a clarity, but you must make these diagrams and you must practice them.